Hello everybody, welcome to another watercolor tutorial. We're going to be painting this beautiful cloudy night sky, and I'm just going to show you really quickly how to dry these clouds. So you're going to have your either square or rectangular piece of paper, and you can just draw with a pencil two humps like this on one side as well as on the other side, and then you can have another cloud sort of building off of that one, and then another one starting from the left side building upwards, and then a little one going downwards like that. It doesn't have to exactly follow this pattern, and you want to make sure that the night sky portion, like this, there's a little bit more space than I left here. So it's sort of so that it's almost half clouds, half sky. And you don't have to worry about erasing your pencil marks because they'll be covered up anyway. So the first thing we're going to do is just create our gradient in the top half of our painting here. So I've just sectioned off my piece of paper with Scotch tape, so you're welcome to do the same. I'm just gonna switch to my mop brush here, and we're just creating a blue gradient. So the top of our gradient is of course going to be darker, and then it's going to get much lighter as we progress downwards. You do want to be mindful, I accidentally painted over this portion. The top parts of our clouds are going to be nice and bright, so do try to avoid painting over them. I'm just using a hair dryer in between my layers to speed up the drying process, so you're welcome to use one if you have one. Otherwise you're going to either have to settle for a much lighter background or have much more patience than I do. But I am just going to keep painting this until I'm happy with my gradient. And I'm just painting on a third layer here. I'm hoping that this will be my last one. All right, so I'm pretty happy with this. I'm just going to let that dry before we move on to the next part of our painting. Okay, so I've just flipped my sketchbook so that it's easier for me to paint my clouds. But what we're going to be doing is painting the bottom of each cloud darker than the top portion. So it's going to be a gradient that goes from dark to light. So I'm just going to start with my two bottom clouds first. And we're using the same blue that we used for the top here. So one way that you can actually do this is you can either use the wet on wet technique. So basically paint your cloud with just water. And then just dab the bottom portion. Because I'm not using cotton paper, it doesn't spread as nicely as cotton paper would. But if you have cotton paper, I definitely recommend using it for this, because then it'll kind of explode into the water and create a really nice effect. If you don't have cotton paper, it's excellent practice using, you know, subpar materials to create the effect that you want. So yeah, basically we're just creating a gradient. I just added some black to my blue. So I think I'm happy with that cloud. I'm going to move on to this one here. So again, I'm kind of using a mix of methods because my paper is not the best quality in this sketchbook. So I'm just making do with what I have. Trying to create a nice gradient. Okay, so we're gonna let these two clouds dry before we do the next layer here. So now that these two are completely dry, we can do our next cloud layer. So again, we're taking the absolute darkest blues that we have, and this time we are painting on top of our pencil marks because we want to hide them. So you're welcome to just take your time with doing this part. Just make sure that you don't let it sit for too long because you don't want it to dry like that. It's okay if you go outside of the lines from the light part of the gradient because we're going to be going over this in a moment with the next layer of cloud. So don't worry about being hyper specific on the light side of the cloud, just on the dark side. That's where you have to be mindful. All right, and I think you got it by now that we are just doing the exact same thing on the next layer. Now this cloud is a little bit bigger than the other ones, so I'm gonna have to be extra careful because my paper dries much quicker. So I have to just be careful that it doesn't dry before I can spread out the gradient. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do is just define the tops of my clouds because you can see that where my gradient overlapped with the top clouds, there's a bit of kind of blue overlap there, and we don't want that to show. So all I'm doing is taking white acrylic paint and going over the pencil marks. Now I have really cheap white acrylic paint. It's not, you know, professional quality, so it's quite translucent. And that actually works to our benefit for this painting because we don't want it to be super duper 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 white, because then it would, there'd be quite a contrast between this one line that we're painting and the rest of the cloud. And you can see this guy compared to the rest of the cloud looks much better. So I'm just going to continue on with this, and I'm going to finish this entire cloud using this technique. Now, if you don't have white acrylic paint and you want to do the same thing, you can just use really pigmented white watercolor paint straight from the tube, or you just have to pick up quite a lot of white acrylic paint from a half pan with very little water so that it's as opaque as possible, because white watercolor at its opacest is still more translucent than acrylic paint at its most translucent, I guess, at its poorest quality. Okay, so next we want to paint our moon and our stars. So what I'm going to do is take white acrylic paint and water it down quite a bit. And then I'm just going to bang it against another paintbrush, and it'll very lightly flicker on onto our canvas or piece of paper. And we want to paint our moon. Of course, don't forget to peel off your tape to reveal beautiful borders if you did so at the beginning. And that's basically it. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, don't forget to subscribe, hit like on this video, and don't forget to check out some of my previous uploads as well.